So this Journey of the Universe project began quite a few years ago, really, with Thomas Berry, our teacher, who in 1978 published a small little pamphlet called The New Story. And the idea was that we all are moved by story, that we act out of stories, whether from our family stories or our genealogy stories, sometimes our national stories, our ethnic stories, and our biblical stories, our Quranic stories. But he said we have, at the present moment, two different stories that are confronting us as people and as a nation, for sure. And that is, we have stories from the world's religions. Many of us come out of a Western religion, and therefore Genesis influences Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the Genesis story of creation affects people coming from that view. But he was also saying we have a scientific story. We have the story of the unfolding and emergence of universe, Earth, and humans in a great sweep of time. And in 150 years, this story of the universe, as he would put it, has changed our consciousness, has changed our understanding of who we are and where we are. And these are the questions that do transform people. The story of where we come from, why are we here, where are we going, right? We all think about this. Some of us morning, noon, and night. But these are the transforming questions. And so he would say we are now living in the midst of a beautiful, awe-inspiring, wonder-inducing story that we are getting a picture of galaxies and stars and the emergence of planets. And we now know that there's 1 trillion galaxies. In this film that we did with Brian Swim, who's a great scientist and storyteller, there's one scene where he said, you know, even 50 years ago, scientists didn't realize. They thought there was only one galaxy in the universe, right? And now we know there are trillions of galaxies. It expands our idea of the great mystery, of whatever, as I say, you might call it. The Buddhists wouldn't name it in any particular way. But it is to say it's bringing together reverence and awe for the complexity that science has invited us into, reverence for the mystery of life. And it's trying to fuse this in a way that says we also have a very important moment on our planet in terms of the environment, in terms of social problems, in terms of our critical moment. What I'm saying is we live in one of the most creative and one of the most destructive moments in human history, right? We see it all around us. We see and we take in the sad, bad news of the destruction of environment, right? Of social collapse, of economic struggle, of families being torn apart by all of the difficulties that they are facing, of the immense inequities in our society, the poverty, the struggles, the rich, the poor, and so on. And yet, in the midst of this creativity, I would suggest that, with this next generation especially, we have a moment, if we can partner with this next generation, into a sense of not just a sustainable future, but a flourishing future. The flourishing of the Earth community, of life systems. Now, I want to come back to this word cosmology, okay? And that sounds like a big word, and it is. But what Thomas Berry was trying to say there is that cosmology is the largest scale story that we can tell, and he was trying to say we need a functional cosmology. And what does that mean? It means it's not just an abstract story out there or telling of the sciences out there, but it functions because it motivates us. It gets us up in the morning. It gets us to our coffee and our work and something, but it gives us a deeper meaning, as I've said already, of our place and our purpose. You know, I said this, to me, to get up in the morning without some sense of purpose, whether it's your children, your deep love in your life, your person, or your something that you're striving for, you're playing an instrument, or whatever it might be. But we all need a larger purpose, right? And so this is by way of saying this activates purpose. So that sense that we are driven to a great work. It might be a simple work, but it's your great work, you know? And that connects you to a deep satisfaction and peace in your life. So Thomas Berry was trying to say we need an inspiring vision, we need engaging values, and we need embedded action. Now, I want to just say that a change of consciousness on this scale does mean we have a change of conscience. We have a sense of living within ever-enlarging circles of concern, of compassion, of relationality. We affect and are affected by the transforming and nourishing powers of heaven and earth. All of nature, we are affected by and affect in our action the transforming and nourishing powers of heaven and earth. If you can understand that in a lifetime, isn't that amazing? Now, the point here, then, is that we are part of a unity of life, right? We're part of a unity of life that, amidst this chaos and complexity, says that our extension, our care, our compassion can make a difference in this world. What you will do will make a difference. Absolutely, for sure. And at this moment of history, what we do collectively will matter perhaps more than almost any other moment in history because of what we are facing. I want to say to each of you that in this great work that Thomas Berry suggested was part of our time, part of our moment, that the contributions that we can make will transform the face of the earth, will transform the face of the earth. And that means that the talents, the possibilities, the energies, the commitments, the sense of loss, the anguish, the suffering, all of that is pouring into this particular moment on planet Earth, actually pouring into this moment. And I think, more than anything, we need a vision of hope. We need a vision of possibility. We do not need despair, overwhelming sadness, a feeling we cannot make it into a future. We need a sense that a common future is a shared future, and we have the energy, the capacity, the creativity to do this if we hold up hope for the human community, for each one of us. So hope is the final word tonight. Hope will triumph.
And my question is, what do you think about how the industrialized nations have, the one-thirds world, has had its opportunity to develop and become, great industrial powers, and in the process has done more than its fair share of polluting. And now the developing nations, as they're trying to move ahead, what is your opinion, or how do we solve this problem? How do we have equity in terms of their opportunity to develop? I think you know where I'm going.
Your question is so critical. And I don't have, a full answer to it, for sure. But that's this notion of sustainable development, of course, which a lot of people feel it's been greenwashed and so on and so forth. But I think underneath it all, we've got to establish a sense of trust, concern, not paternalism, but some deep trust to say, we're in this together. This is a huge moment. It's a huge moment. So I wish I had the answer, because this is the central question, absolutely central question. But what is equity really matters here. What is equity? So are we going to be able to say, we're going to change our lifestyle? Whoa, that's not politically saleable, right? We can't even tax carbon. But I think we have in this country, and I'm still impressed that the EU, people from the EU still come here, because the EU is so far ahead of us on all these sustainability issues, right? So far ahead of us. But so I still say, like, why do you keep coming here? Because so many creative ideas are here. You know, I feel it right here in this room. So many creative ideas are here. So we can't drown ourselves in guilt. We've got to put forward creativity, possibility, energy, and immense trust. We've got to create the sense that our nation cares about the rest of the world.
Dr. Tucker, thank you so much for your amazing lecture. I study conflict resolution at Columbia University, and you talked about the fact that to awaken our consciousness, our conscience needs to be awakened first. Mm-hmm. And I think religion and philosophy have the primary role to play in awakening our conscience. Yet I find in my coursework or in everything I read around me that the role of religion is really understated in today's day and age. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on how religion needs to be mainstreamed so that our conscience can be awakened.
Mm-hmm. Great question. You know, that's a tough one in a lot of ways, right? And so part of what we're trying to do in Universe Story is, of course, present a spiritual vision, but that's not announced with a particular tradition, you know, that's an all-inclusive, but spiritually energizing, powerful vision for the work that needs to be done. Then, as I mentioned, and as Paula was kind enough to say, we've been working for 15 years with the world's religions in a project that started at Harvard. And by the way, here's the secret. You know, I feel very, very privileged to be at Yale and have done some of this work at Harvard. And we're trying to take these great institutions and take your concerns into the heart of academia and say, yes, religion matters. You know, when we started these conferences in 1995, and we said, you know, there's 1 billion Muslims, there's 1 billion Hindus, there's 1 billion Confucians, and there's 1 billion Catholics. It's amazing. You know, are we going to ignore the beliefs and practices, texts and traditions of 1,000-year-old religions and say they have nothing to do with the environment, the healing practices, why we care about trees or water or fish and so on? These traditions knew. The Buddhists in Southeast Asia have ordained trees to preserve forests. The Hindu replanting of trees in Tamil Nadu and some of the temples and so on. There are practices around the world that are awesome. I mean, I could tell you, it is amazing, really exciting stuff. It puts us to shame. It's so cool. So we said, we gathered together these scholars, you know, and I got on the phone and I was like, okay, you're studying Hinduism and you're doing Shankara and you're doing Ramanuja and you're doing these, you know, these great thinkers of Hinduism. What do they have to say for our time? You know, or you're doing Moses Maimonides and, you know, in the Jewish tradition and so on. Let's bring these traditions, let's bring these thinkers forward, right? And so these academics are like, shift gear, out of the library, into the world. But there was an amazing outpouring of energy because those scholars had spent years and years studying these traditions, living in the countries, learning the languages. And I can say, you know, I almost lost my sanity studying Japanese and trying to learn, you know. So, but people, it's again this point, people want to make a difference. They want to make a difference. So they came to Harvard. We paid not 1 cent. We published 10 volumes. No one was paid anything to do this work. But the point is, we have to take seriously in the heart of academia that these traditions matter. They're not just traditions, be it Buddhist practice, be it Hindu, be it Muslim, Christian. We've got to respect difference. And we've got to respect the spiritual journey. That's why we use this word, the journey of the human community that struggles with anguish and suffering almost every day, right? How many days are free of that? You know, so there's a long answer to your question, but I will just say we've also got to have a language that is not rhetorical or preachy, but brings forward the power of these traditions, not in conflict, but in a common cause for a common future. So you have been one of the most remarkable audiences that I have spoken to in a long time. I really want you to know that. Definitely, definitely. I have felt such energy and support tonight. I have felt such love and compassion, and I have felt a tremendous sense of hope in this room. And I will take this as March 7th, the birthing of this film, as a great gift. Thank you. Thank you.